Welcome into the Smite Challenger Circuit, Smite fans. Finch and Aggro here as we are about to start off in Europe with an excellent matchup. They'll be following up with the SBL at 1, so you're going to want to stick around for all of the excellent Smite action here today. Aggro, all of the matchups here in Europe have been good, but I think this Snake Hunters Clay Soldiers matchup, where they're relatively even here in the standings, I think this should be a pretty good one.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad because every time we go to the European SCC, I'm like, yeah, it should be really close, and I have no idea what's going to happen. But that's kind of how this region has gone. It's been very close, and it's impossible to say what team is going to show up a little bit better on a given day, because I think that's where we are with this region. Elysium aside, in my opinion, they still are a cut above the rest, though their record is pretty close in comparison to a lot of other top-end teams in this region historically. I think that the rest of the pack really is so close that it's just a matter of who plays better on that day. And that goes even for Elysium, because we've seen them take losses during this stretch and during this phase. So that it makes this region a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I believe it was Pandemonium that got the only set win against that team. Part of why we were so high on that roster. And then they had a great matchup against Accounting Department, ended up with the even record. Those are the top three. Snake Hunters and Clay Soldiers make up those next two, and then Just F6 still struggling to find their first set win. So Snake Hunters and Clay Soldiers, whoever wins this, ties up with the Accounting Department and Pandemonium. It's actually pretty big. It puts them one game behind Elysium, and as you said, you only need one day where maybe they couldn't get in the practice they thought they wanted, or their draft's a little off, and you're right there with Elysium. This is a critical set.
Yeah, 2 through 5 in this region in particular, literally interchangeable. Just whoever is playing best on that given day. And then any one of those 4 teams, of the 2 through 5 seeds, can beat Elysium, that top-end seed. Of course, the bottom-end team's still struggling a little bit, but we've seen flashes of some good play from them as well. I've been really impressed with the EU SCC. They still play a little bit slower than NA, maybe a little bit slower than they need to at times, in my opinion. But overall, I think that we've seen the level of play in this region be very high.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Clay Soldiers here, Aggro. This is the Sibi, Agent, Caspanify, Ferrocryk roster. And this is a team that I think does need to play a lot through Sibi. We've seen him be a pretty impactful player. Look at that. We're just on the same page here between me and the replay team. But I think it's just the actual truth of the matter, man, is that if you can get this guy involved in your team fight, you're going to look a lot better.
Definitely, and he's got that experience over there in that solo lane, and solo lane has been pretty stacked in the EU SCC this year. Not necessarily all the names that you'd expect. You know, you don't have the Julios anymore as he stepped up to the SPL. You kind of expect more name stays there, but I think that these guys are making a name for themselves with how well they've been playing. For me, it's always going to be about, can Ferrocryk get his priority pick in that Giannis? How is he going to look on whatever he gets instead? Because teams oftentimes do end up banning that away from him. But the back line of this Clay Soldiers team is the one that I'm usually looking at. Sibi, I trust, as you mentioned, to do a great job. He has been on gear. Ferrocryk and Caspanify, 2 guys who have played together for a long time. Can they use that experience with one another to end up outperforming the backline dive of the opposition?
That's what they're going to need, especially when on the other side you've got one of the Pentakid, right, as one of the backliners over there. So that is scary. It always puts pressure on you to make sure you're performing, because you seem to know that he will. So let's go ahead and talk then about Snake Hunters, the box boys, as it were. Rapio on this squad, Kha'Zix and Vaporous Coast. These guys were all on the box scene together. I think Gunter and Shoxy were as well, just not so sure if they were with that actual team. But these are some guys that have now been playing together, still struggling a little bit to find their synergy, but sometimes just get it done through kind of raw team fight. Like, I don't know if they came in with that strat, but they end up making it work in the actual fight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see a lot of Ratatosker in these clips for Rapio. You know, they're going for these more early game styles, and I think that when I think about how this team should function, I do think that early game pressure should be in the cards for them. But even though they don't always find it, they still end up making it work in the end, so it's really not that bad. I think that this team does impress me with how they get leads and can push them when they get them, but they are not one-dimensional in that sense. They can take it to the later stages and be impactful there. For me, look, I'm a little biased. I love watching backliners play and play together really well. Coast has looked very good, in my opinion, through the vast majority of this season. Gunter's been a little bit more hot and cold. So when Gunter's hot, this team looks really, really strong. That mid 3v3 core is important for this team. They feel a little bit inconsistent to me. I want to see what Gunter's going to do here today alongside Rapio to try and show off and find a victory for the squad.
And if I'm on the Snake Hunters, I'm telling my boys, listen, we took Elysium to the brink. We gave them a real run for their money
Yeah.
in that set, got it all the way to 3, and we're even ahead for a little while late into that game. Just wasn't quite enough for them to close that one out. So I think they've got a shot up against some teams that aren't quite the strength of Elysium. Let's move into the picks and bans and find out what tools they shall take into battle. It's Clay Soldiers in that first pick position. We talked about how Ferricrick does really like to play this Giannis that elevates his play a bit. I wonder if that's something they'll prioritize early on in their draft this time.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in Gunter's god pool. That's usually the question. If you need to first pick it a specialist god like Giannis. But I'd be kind of surprised if Snake Hunters let it through picks and bans. I really think that it is that good in Ferricrick's hands that I probably wouldn't want to let him get it. But the Snake Hunters now have to choose between Athena and Giannis, and I'd suppose they're probably going to choose to ban the Athena, which leaves Clay Soldiers the option. I wouldn't mind Clay Soldiers kind of calling the bluff of the Snake Hunters here, saying, I don't think you're going to pick the Giannis. Let's get something else. Yeah. Achilles has been so popular in this region and so good for so many different solo laners. Let's snatch that up, and I'd expect them to take Giannis in the next 2 picks before the second ban phase.
Yeah, I wonder if this is Heimdall plus. No, it's on her. Coast was playing it in the replays, and he wants to go back to it. I got to catch up to this on her #1 meta. Heimdall, not sliding too far, everybody. He's still going to be probably next up, but it's on her on everybody's minds right now. Then the Scylla to back it up. They prioritize the back line right out of the gate, and Gunter and Coast now set. Got to make sure they get a little bit of setup for this Scylla, but in terms of damage potential, hard to do better than this.
This is the way that they've been picking and banning for a lot of this year. I mean, getting that backline set up and ready to go. Ferricrick goes straight to that Giannis, and they make the right idea. They get that Achilles and wait on that priority pick. I do think the Heimdall that you mentioned would fit well here. It's a pretty decent matchup up against the Onher. You prevent a lot of his good aggression with that disperse knockup. You just use your 2 and your knockup immune, and all of a sudden he's in a bad spot. But instead they go with the Xing Chen. 100% win rate through 4 games is eye-catching to me, and I do think that Xing Chen is very undervalued, but I don't know if I love it this early. I mean, you don't have CC, non-CC immune ults on the other side. It's going to be hard to get value out of that ultimate, and it's not exactly that scary to be banned away. There are a lot of other supports that are still open. This tells me that Clay Soldiers want to just wait on that Hunter pick for probably the Assassin on the other side, see what Rapio is going to lock in, and just wait overall on what the rest of their draft is going to be. Maybe they want to flex this Achilles to jungle or solo.
Both teams waiting on the jungler, though, is a bit scary. So, yeah, they're going to double down on it. Remember, these games are a little bit earlier played than the SPL, which are on the day. So that's why Loki's still getting banned out here by the Snake Hunters, even though in the SPL right now he's not playing. So no confusion there. So 4 assassin bans. Got to go a little bit deeper into the god pool now for both of these assassins. In particular, it looks like Snake Hunters are willing to wait. Rapio trusting that he can 10th pick and respond to whatever the Clay Soldiers get.
I was expecting a Ratatosker pick. I'm a little surprised as well because that's been the pick that he's gone to try and solidify that early game. And with all these junglers off the board, I think it makes sense to go straight to it. But maybe feeling like Saraga on the other side is not going to go for that Ratatosker. And the Cerberus, again, boasting a very good win rate, 86% over a lot of games played. So you end up with a pretty strong pick in one that can team fight very, very well. But I'm a little worried about how they're going to kill this Giannis. That is not a character that sticks on Giannis particularly well. Cerberus damage is a little bit elongated. Sure, the paralyzing spit is burst damage, but a lot of it is that ghastly breath. And Giannis just doesn't worry about that.
Yeah, now this Nemesis could potentially pick on this Emir in the early. All these chaining slows together. The ability for some nice lockdown from the Xing Chen could be a problem. But it's the Serket at the last minute with the Ratatosker still open aggro. So certainly something he could have, and I wouldn't have hated to see him go for it. But this is a ton of setup in that mid 3v3. Is that the call between Emir and Serket to put big pressure on the beads on the other side?
It must be, because I think you have the right read on it. It's all about CC, and it's all about this lockdown for Gunter. He's really going to have a really good game here. We were talking about how it's hot or cold. You got to be hot in this match, because I feel like the whole draft is set up around facilitating this Scylla and on her backline. And there's a lot of mobility on the other side. I mean, we're talking Giannis, Xing Chen, Heimdall, Nemesis. Those are 4 of the hardest to kill gods in their roles. I think it might be a little bit difficult. I'm just not a Serket believer quite yet. I think that she feels a little bit weak to me. I've played a lot of her in Season 8 and just can't seem to find a whole lot of success. Though, if you saw my tweet, I am cursed. It's impossible for me to win anymore in any game I play. So I think that it might just be me. Maybe Rapio can make it work.
If we do end up hanging out aggro, I'll get you a smash win. Don't you worry. No chance I get a dub there. It's Clay Soldiers versus Snake Hunters. Game number 1. Let's go into the action.
Well, it's time to start this Saturday of Smite action off with Clay Soldiers and Snake Hunters. My name is Dolson. Mifflin is with me. Doug working the cameras for game number 1. And Mifflin, the Des put a lot of emphasis on getting Ferricrick, something he's comfortable with here in the mid lane. And it's a matchup, I think, that we're starting to get a little bit more used to seeing, this Giannis up against the Scylla.
Yeah, it's almost a non-matchup, isn't it? How often are Giannis and Scylla actually fighting in the mid 3v3? I'd say just about never. Ferricrick is going to spend the entirety of the first 15 or so minutes just power farming his lane, then going to the jungle and trying to strip away some back camps, or maybe controlling the mid camps or something along those lines, utilizing that additional mobility that Giannis has. Outside of that, I think that my big question mark for the Clay Soldiers is how well they're going to be able to transition into the mid game. Because if you look at their draft top to bottom, I don't think they have the strongest team fight on the planet, especially considering how strong the Snake Hunters team fight looks between the ample CC from Kha'Zix and Shoxy Foxy. The CC output of even on her with this large AoE slow should be very hard for the Clay Soldiers to navigate once they start fighting these neutral objectives.
What's the take on Serket here? I mean, aggro raised some concerns. In his mind, obviously basing it off of some ranked lack of success there. Jokes aside, we haven't seen all that much of the Serket out of the jungle, but maybe it's the type of pick that certain players will like. You get a lot of single target setup, and maybe the damage can follow up on something that Rapio is able to provide here in the early and mid and even into late game team fights.
Yeah, I'm a huge Serket fan. Even back in the day when me and Agro were tussling on the Battleground of the Gods, I was locking Serket pretty consistently. And it's that bruiser style build that was in fashion back in Season 4, and now back in fashion in Season 8, that really does facilitate her to be that initiator, first one in, last one out, CC lockdown god that she needs to be. I think Rapio very likely going to go for something like a Shifter Shield or an Anchile so that he can go in and not have to worry about his HP bar while he sets up for Gunter. Serket ultimate, not only true damage, but also phenomenal lockdown. I'm a monster should always ring true.
Let's see what Rapio is able to get done here. Mid lane for Clay Soldiers and jungle. First to reach level 3, though. Just where the minions were hanging there. Already pressure for Vaporish Coast, and Shoxy Foxy over here in the duo lane. Tends to be that way when you get on her and Ymir in a lane together. We were kind of passively talking about this, Mifflin. Not only is Heimdall and on her kind of a matchup of hunters that we're used to seeing, but this duo lane kind of stack in general, I think, is starting to become a lot more popular. Xing Xin starting to see more play as a freeze and a stun connects onto Agent, but the leap away will keep him alive. Both supports are at half HP, but given Vaporish Coast's lower health bar, maybe it's the Clay Soldiers who come out a little further ahead of this trade.
Yeah, and every time Snake Hunters dedicate damage onto this Xing Shen, it's essentially lost damage. The HP 5 from his passive is going to keep him topped off. Just watch his HP bar filling up, man. It's so fast. Feels like the Snake Hunters really should be hitting Caspanify or not hitting at all.
Rapio on over towards this purple buff here, looking for the invade. Clay Soldiers none the wiser. Pressure tends to buy you that. And so the first purple buff invade of the game successful now for the Snake Hunters. They'll double back, find out that their purple buff is not theirs here in just a moment. And in the meantime, Snake Hunters able to grab this one for themselves. Over in the solo lane, matchup between Cerberus and Achilles. Bluestone Pendant start for Sibby on the Achilles. Tends to be pretty standard there, but a Tainted Steel start over there for Kha'Zix. We saw a lot of early pressure in Season 8 on banning away this Cerberus, and then some picks made its way through. In that team fighting phase, the big ultimate there can be a big difference maker.
It really can be. That Stygian Torment, if it's not at least pulling one person in, should at least be burning a couple targets worth of beads, and then from there, again, set up for that CC from Rapio, from Shoxy Foxy. Kha'Zix going to have a large role to fill. He's going to be the essentially dedicated initiator for his team, because it's a lot easier for Cerberus to get involved than it is for something like a Ymir. Nice double freeze coming through from Shoxy here. We'll see if Vaporish Coast wants to get involved instead. It's a little bit more emphasis on farming, controlling this mid camp.
That's right, decent damage from Shoxy Foxy as well. To get Agent down to about half HP. The battle over the Harpy rages on, and it looks like the Clay Soldiers are actually the ones to get it, but Rapio, in the meantime, rotates on over. Beads used by Caspanify, but Rapio there and waiting, and it's the engage from the Circuit and its first blood as well. On over to the Snake Hunters.
That's just the relative strength of Rapio's engage, man. That lockdown's so strong, makes it easy to find the Desert Fury there. Maybe a slight overcommitment from Vaporish Coast, doesn't feel like he needs to use the ultimate, but certainly worth it to find first blood. Jungler, Rapio, gonna get all that first blood bounty, 400 gold in his pocket, and he was already got a pretty decent gold lead going into that. But meanwhile, the entire time Rapio was setting up for that kill in duo, Sarah Gazek was farming the jungle, has a nice XP lead for himself.
And the ultimate as well. It's a blink away from Shoxy Foxy. Doesn't want that Nem ult to land on him, and Saraga is going to rotate over, help with the purple buff this time, so Clay Soldier is able to secure some of that XP for themselves in the meantime. So early emphasis on the left-hand side of the map here from both junglers. One on the invade, one on the defense of the invade in Saraga. So it's been quiet over in the mid lane as well. But now the face of the game starts to change up a little bit. Both supports have reached level 5. It's time to watch them roam, and this is where the Xing Chen can start to set up for some big damage in mid, maybe even over in solo.
Yeah, if Xing Chen's able to rotate forward and at least burn the beads away from Gunter, could open up an opportunity for a gank from Sarah Gazek. But for now, it's going to be a 3-on-3 hover on the right-hand side. Gunter cannot step forward, does not have anyone on his team with him. I think that really, I'm expecting the Snake Hunters to try their best to just avoid fighting in the early game, at least in the 3v3. Duo lane, different answer.
Oh, man.
Caspadify, no beads, no life anymore either. Vaporish Coast able to pick up the kill this time around. Keep your pressure up in duo, Snake Hunters. Don't fight in mid. And I think that once we start to get to that 12, 13, 15-minute mark of the game, that's where the Snake Hunters are really going to start emphasizing the team fight. Try and group up around the Gold Fury, the Pyromancer. It's on the Clay Soldiers to kind of control it a little bit earlier on, or wait way deeper into the late game and pray that Sergazek and Ferricrit can use these hyper carry gods.
Well, that's such a good concrete example as the Greater Scorpion will be secured by the Snake Hunters. That's such a good concrete example of why the Anhur and Ymir duo is so difficult to play into. Granted, it's a Heimdall without beads, so it was relatively cut and dry here, but the fight will continue. Agent sends Shoxy Foxy and Rapios the opposite direction, so it's just a defensive ultimate there from the Xing Chen. So Agent will walk away, helping Sarah Gazek stay alive. Think it was necessary. Gunter had the Ima Monster charged up, ready to crash down, and that Nemesis would have been quite low on the other end of things there. So the Snake Hunter continuing to pile up this pressure, but what does that convert itself into? Only about 800-900 or so in the gold lead at the moment. I think Saraga has done a good job of kind of counter engaging, I guess, doubling back, helping out with the purple buffs, trying to slow down this Clay Soldier's gold lead.
They're doing a good job of it, but I'm still worried about how well the Clay Soldier is going to be able to utilize that team fight. The Snake Hunters, yes, have the slight gold lead at this point, but for now, the neutral objectives are starting to spawn up. Gold Fury Scorpion taken down, and Gold Fury respawned itself. And the Clay Soldiers are going to have a distinct advantage on objective burn, especially considering the build path Sergazek elects to go for. It's going to be a stone-cutting sword in that first slot from Nemesis, essentially making her act as a secondary ADC once they do group up around this Gold Fury. So that's going to be another opportunity that the Snake Hunters have to keep their eyes on.
Stygian Torment used, and Sibby has to use the beads on the other end. Dog Lover is an interesting title to use going up against the Cerberus here in this lane. We'll see if that proves to be true or not. There was just shy of execute threshold a moment ago for Sibby there, but now it's a collapse onto Agent here in the mid, a portal over onto Rapio. And Gunter's just going to go back to base. So these small moments of setup around the mid lane have sent Clay Soldiers back to base a couple of times. None have converted on into kills just yet. Look at the ward coverage, though, from the Clay Soldiers. So deep in the Snake Hunter side of the jungle here. They want to be able to sniff out anyone from the Chaos side, rotating on in towards that. Gold Fury, could say the same for the Snake Hunters, though, as well. The left side of the map, absolutely riddled with ward coverage, so everyone's going to know exactly where everyone is over here on the left.
but no wards on the gold tree itself proper, right? So no one's going to have actual vision on it if the objective does get started up. Sure, the Snake Hunters and even the Clay Soldiers will know if either team rotates in, but they're really going to have to phase check it if either team does decide to start it. So far, 4-man grouping rather, on the left-hand side of the map from the Snake Hunters, seeing if maybe they can find a pick. If Caspanify goes down again, that could very easily be the objective.
Oh, wow. Quick on the ultimate there from Caspanify, thinking maybe a blink is coming from Shoxy Foxy. Still has his beads, but low on mana. Agent now in the crush, and that's an easy kill over to the Snake Hunters. I'm not sure, man. Graveyard, I guess, for the next 18 seconds. The Xing Chen is off the map, and so now it's a purple buff invade again from the Snake Hunters. On the opposite side of the map, though, Saraga is going to put pressure on the blue buff of the Snake Hunters, and it's going to get dropped. So now an invade for the Clay Soldiers goes off successfully.
I'm surprised the Snake Hunters don't elect to go for the gold free itself. They pick up a kill on the Agent, they know Caspanify went back to base, and they had eyes on 2 members on the right-hand side from the Clay Soldiers. Ferricrick barely evades death there with the use of his beads. Feels like, again, Snake Hunters a little bit hesitant to utilize their early game advantage here, as Sibby gonna fall pretty easily.
You'd think. Rapio on a killing spree. Sorket off to a 3-0 start. That's some serious damage this early in the game. Saraga might just go down here. Look at all the shielding, though, keeping this Nemesis alive. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel sends one back. Gunter, inch perfect on the Sikkim there. And now the Snake Hunters rolling off to a 5-kill lead.
Tough start for the Clay Soldiers now. 5 kills in the lead. And another 2,000 gold as well, and that's without a single objective having fallen so far this game. No towers, no gold furies, just kills separating these two teams, and experience 3,000 in favor of the Chaos team as well. Tough start, but certainly not insurmountable. You want to have a slightly slower start when you have gods like Yanis and Nemesis on your team, so I'm sure that they're willing to take that into account for this pacing of the match. But for now, Snake Hunters have a pretty large advantage moving in towards these objectives. We could see them move over towards the Forp, if you would, or even the Gold Fury if they need to.
Did you have to swallow some pride there to get that one out, Miff? Are you a staunch Gorp and Forp denier? You're not buying into it just yet? All right, fair enough. But look, you said it. We got one out of you, and I think that's all we could ask, and we appreciate you for it. Gunter been pretty consistent here on hitting these crushes, and that damage has just gotten Saraga, Ferricrick a couple of times, just all out of sorts. Now the Nemesis has to head right on back to base. In the meantime, though, on the left-hand side, we're getting used to seeing this as well. The Heimdall a little bit behind. We're getting used to seeing this. On the right-hand side of the map, Kha'Zix now picks up a kill. Rapio waltzes on in. Sibby goes down. Hey, another crush from Gunter. This one works through space and time from Ferricrick. Goes flying the opposite direction of where maybe those portals are wanted, but he'll survive nonetheless. And it's another member of the Clay Soldiers that has to head back to base, thanks to the burst damage from Gunter.
Man, it feels like a little bit of jungle diff so far, doesn't it? Rapio involved all over the map, but now Shoxy Foxy's too far forward, goes for the invade, and goes to Niflheim for his troubles.
We'll see if Gunter can make it over to the left-hand side in time. Shoxy Foxy surviving in a beautiful wall. Keeps the Ymir in the fight a little bit longer. Agent, though, had been face-tanking all the damage. I'm a monster. Look at the burst. Gunter rotates over. 201 now. For the Snake Hunters mid laner. Top net worth in the game. Rapio under a little pressure, but the leap away will keep him in the fight longer. Gold Fury still not started, despite Agent being dead and Caspanify having to go back, but Snake Hunters continuing to pull these individual picks.
They are, and you know what? I was going to rib them a little bit for having not gone for an objective with all the lead that they've had, but if it's just going to keep working like this, if you're going to be 7-0, I don't think I can complain about the pacing. Now, Kha'Zix in a little bit of trouble. Saraga Zek getting involved.
That's right, the leap away from the execute, but also from tower range. Finally, Clay Soldiers on the board, and Saraga is going to rotate in, assist on that one with the Nemesis ultimate. Kha'Zix, not much you can do there. You use the beads. Stygian Torments gets beaded out by Saraga Zek, and the Clay Soldiers throw a lot at the wall there. Finally get something to stick. Rapio in behind Sibby here. This is going to be a 1v1. Nobody else rotating in from the Snake Hunters. Depending on how aggressive Rapio wants to get, Plenty is the answer in the mid lane. Ferricrick going low as well. Sibby uses the one dash, finds the stun as well, but Rapio with the up-down will attempt to close the gap, and Miff,
oh no!
just a matter of time, but the blink from Sibby might keep him alive.
I can't believe Rapio decided to give up on that one. He must have been worried about a counter rotation from someone on the side of the Clay Soldiers. No eyes on Sergazek means that Rapio can't feel safe chasing out that kill. Unfortunate use of the jump there. Doesn't connect with Sibi. Loses out on the kill. But look, 7-1 still across the top. Still 3-0-2 for Rapio in the jungle. You play so well throughout the first 14 minutes of the game. I'm willing to overlook some slight mechanical misplays, some here and there. But now Snake Hunters, another grouping on the left-hand side, and they're looking at the purple.
And Serga dropping the ultimate on Vaporish Coast, but it's going to be maybe the last thing
Nice
you guys
wall.
hear. The wall is brilliant. Vaporish Coast, one auto away and one auto lands. Agent, this half HP, looks like he was dueling with Gunter. Spear the Magus picked up out of the mid lane for Gunter. Sick'em Crush combos now going to be hitting ever more potently, and it's a double kill for Coast, and the Snake Hunters now maybe choose to go back towards the Fury.
You gotta think so, right? Kha'Zix makes his rotation over as well, can goaltend and make
Watch
sure
him
Sibi
leave.
isn't able to rotate in. Now, he's not leaving, all right? He's just making sure Sibi's not coming in. Don't take this away from us, Dave, because Vadify goes for the steal, but can't step far enough forward. Rapio zones him off, and that was a close one. Faircrick almost picks it up with the unstable Vortex, but Snake Hunters do get the gold free for themselves.
This early game starting to spiral out of control. Beads used by Sibi now, Stygian Torment. A fair price to pay, I think, for getting the beads off this Achilles. That small uptick in gold, largely around the fight that happened over there in solo, and slowing down the onslaught that the Snake Hunters were bringing, but now everything's starting to go back downhill from there. There's a 1 level lead in the jungle, 1 in support, but 2 over out of the Hunter role. I wonder if I'm remembering this correctly. It seems like most of the time we're seeing Anhur up against Heimdall. It's always the Anhur that has like 2 or 3 levels of a lead over Heimdall going into right around this mid-game part. Granted, there's a lot more at play, this specific game, maybe the support matchups, but it feels like the Anhurs have just been absolutely swinging in the games that we've seen them.
Dave, I'm going to keep it a $150 with you, man. I'm going to use some FGC terminology here. That is an 8-2 matchup in favor of the Anhur. I mean,
okay,
you
so
can
I'm not wrong.
use the Impale to knock him out of the Bifrost portal. You can use your own ultimate to not only immune out Heimdall's ultimate, but Heimdall has to line up that immense Gulf Swing. You're probably going to land at least 4 of your ultimate spheres on Anhur. The reason you pick Heimdall is for his ability to play in the team fight late game, the CC setup, as well as his relative safety. He's almost like Jingwei in that if Heimdall doesn't want to fight you, you really can't fight him. It's up to him whether or not he's willing to take those engagements, and so far Kaspanify has been willing, so Vaporish Coast has been benefiting.
Yeah, 302 is a pretty decent benefit and a 3-level lead there, so it's all about scaling into the late game now. Vaporish Coast getting collapsed on here. Let's see the power of the Anhur against a 4-man collapse from the Clay Soldiers. Clay Soldiers realizing that maybe it's a fruitless effort. Attempt to back away here. It's a portal away from Faircrook. Agent alone in the back, looking for a Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Will only find Shoxy Foxy, but a crush separates out the fight, and Vaporish Coast makes it 4. Agent left alone. And now the Snake Hunters surge in.
An 0-6 duo lane looks to get a little bit more pressure put onto him. Gunter left isolated in the back, has Sergazek chase him down. Aegis keeps him alive. Vaporish Coast picks up the kill and saves Gunter's life.
Oh man, this is just brutal. Faircrook has to use the beads now. He'll portal on out to safety. The fact that Gunter stays alive there, pretty devastating for the Clay Soldiers. Could we be looking at a tower dive here? You might have enough players to get it done.
Nice try.
Just shy on the wall. Well played from Sibi. Now a couple of blinks have kept this Achilles alive, and finally it's going to be the mid lane tier 1 tower that falls. Rapio takes his time, invades the back speed buff. It's methodical from the Snake Hunters, pulling every last bit of gold out of these advantages.
That's the second speed buff invade of this game so far. Rapio getting the better end of this jungle matchup. 2-level lead in the jungle, 1-level lead in mid, and we're talking 3 levels out of that ADC role. Snake Hunters so far ahead in the XP department, and Agent just now respawns and walks back forward. Could lose his life here.
Right, Spear the Magus procced onto Agent. Look at the CC from the pillar. Agent could just not move. 0-5 now on the Xing Chen. It's a Stygian Torment backing away. That would have been a massive through space and time had it connected onto Shoxy Foxy. Vaporish Coast, or even Kha'Zix there in the back. Vaporish Coast will get another here. It's becoming difficult to watch, Mifflin. 19 minutes in, you're 5,000 gold behind. The Snake Hunters show no signs of slowing down here. The health bars are kind of low. Maybe this is a chance around the Pyro for the Clay Soldiers to find a pick.
Gunter's playing goalkeeper on his own and takes out Saragazek! How often is your Scylla not confirming the objective and instead playing that zone role? Saraga falls down
That's
so
what Saraga thought.
easily there. Had beats available, doesn't use it. Unfortunate situation for the Clay Soldiers jungler. Snake Hunters, man, it feels like a boxing match where they're just begging their opposition to stay down. Let the 10 count roll out. 14 kills in 19 minutes. 15 kills total in the match. That's just the ratio we're looking at here, man. 19 minutes, and again, 5,000 gold, 6,000. Never do math on cast. Walk to the Fire Giant, Snake Hunters. I don't think anyone can stop you.
Yeah, I'm not sure they can. It's a 19.5-minute Fire Giant. You'll have the I'm a Monster back here shortly. So maybe you delay things out just to get that extra confirm online. But Clay Soldiers would be gutsy to walk forward into this. It was just early jungle pressure from Rapio, and then things started to spiral out of control there over in the duo lane. Shoxy, Foxy, and Coast have been playing that 1-2 punch of CC perfectly this game. And it might just get worse here. Agent,
God.
looks like 0-6 is maybe waiting around the corner off to the side. Goes in Rapio, and Agent is indeed 0-6 here in this game. It's an 0-8 duo lane for the Clay Soldiers. Fighting on the left-hand side as the Oni Fury has respawned, so there will be an objective secured now by the Snake Hunters. Still so many towers to go here, Mifflin. This is a gold lead built just by kills and invades, as you mentioned earlier on. Just the one tier 1 tower is down. So it's kind of on the Snake Hunters, right? You have to imagine at this point to just keep the foot on the gas, right? You don't want to let up here. There's still a lot on this map for you to take, but also a lot on the map to allow the Clay Soldiers to try to delay out this game. It's about keeping this momentum going.
But as the time ticks on in Smite, towers become less and less reliable as an unofficial 6th man. Tier 1's essentially impossible to defend this late into the game. Tier 2's, you put up a soft defense occasionally, and if you're able to turn the fight, you look for it there. But I think it's just a bunch of gold caches on the map for the Snake Hunters to go pick up. Clay Soldiers, in my mind, are only putting up a hard defense on Fire Giant and Phoenixes.
Sibby gets frozen out, and Snake Hunters secure the FG for themselves. Big fight now. Clay Soldiers need to get something, but they've found nothing as of yet. Thorns and stun onto Agent. And 0-7 now is the Xing Chen. Caspanify has to use the ultimate to dash away. It's a beautiful wall, a beautiful stun from Shoxy Foxy, and the dominoes fall in tow. And the Snake Hunters get the FG. They get the duo lane once more, and now they're looking towards mid.
Might as well take out that tier 2 tower. Saragazek on the left-hand side, just trying to get a little bit of farm to himself. Looks like he's moving in towards an Executioner or potentially the Kid Size, but might not get the opportunity. Snake Hunters knocking on the door of the Titan, and nobody on the side of Clay Soldiers has backed yet. Ferricrick might be the first one back, but in a body bag.
There is a portal away, and that'll keep Ferricrick on the map, but the mid lane Harpy's starting to look towards him now. The rest of Snake Hunters not wanting to push any further back away. There's only minions on the left side of the map now, as Ferricrick will complete his back. That's going to leave this tier 2 tower open. There's a lot of time on this Fire Giant. You've already lost one Phoenix. Snake Hunters haven't even gone back yet, so there's going to be a lot of gold to be spent as well. Might be looking at a sub 25-minute game here, Mifflin, if this next push goes well.
Yeah, Vaporishko's just straight up bought Deathbringer. My man skipped the short sword, didn't care about any of that stuff, just goes straight to Deathbringer itself. Wind Demon online as well means that he is going to be absolutely swinging in these fights. But I think the same can be said for just about everyone on the side of Snake Hunters who are approaching their 6th item in their builds. Whereas the Clay Soldiers over there still finishing up those 5th items. Saragazek finally gets Executioner for himself. Agent 0-7 on the slash line. Looks like he's moving in towards a Breastplate of Valor. That's not going to be enough tankiness. You probably want a little bit of HP going into these fights, but keep your eyes on the left-hand side. I think that potentially Kos is willing to take this 2v1.
I think he's smart to try to take the 2v1. Nearly gets the stun onto Caspanify, but now it's Agent the Xing Chen left leaping away, trying to remain safe. But you get that much damage from Kha'Zix flying in. No chance. And then Vaporishkos as well, 17,000 damage, 23 minutes into the game. So it's left side Phoenix now being looked at by the Snake Hunter. Seems like a matter of time here. 30 seconds left on the respawn from Agent. So now the engage severely crippled for the Clay Soldiers. Here's to hoping that the Phoenix here is still that unofficial 5th man, I guess, until Agent respawns.
I'm pretty sure those thorns got removed by a singular auto attack from Vaporage Coast. That's how quickly it burns away. And look, Snake Hunter's already in, man. I gotta give it back to you.
That's right. This could be the game-ending team fight here if the Snake Hunters win it as handily as they have the rest. Big-time Stygian and Torment. Ah, but Patrick gets the first kill on the Gunter, but maybe the uh-oh's just about to sit there. It's Rapio. Finds a double kill. Rampaging is this Circuit. It's going to be Caspanify and Agent against 4. Vaporage Coast still alive, still with the FG buff, and that's all you might need here if you're the Snake Hunters. Left side Phoenix will fall. Minions shortly outside the base, but I'm not sure the Snake Hunters are worried about minions. Caspanify blinked.
Oh, wait!
And suddenly he was gone. Massive whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Might slow down this Titan siege by the Snake Hunters. There's no response for the next 15 or so seconds in Mifflin. It's a matter of time now before game 1 comes to a close with the Snake Hunters on top.
Yeah, it looks like Agent made a critical decision to defend his KD rather than the Titan for a moment there. Picks up a kill on the Rapio, but doesn't save his life. Vaporage Coast, immortal at the end of the game. 22 kills for his entire team. Look, they look good. Chaos team, run it back.
How happy are you that you don't have to break that one down on the desk, Miff?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and predict what the desk says, and I know Agro's listening, so he's going to have to think up something new. That's a game where you get blown out in the early game, so you got to really just adjust yourself and think about the next match. You can't really harp on it too much. Just come in with your own identity, all that good stuff. But maybe the desk can bring something different.
Miff's got the coach speak down pat. Game 1 is a quick one. Miff and I, we don't need a break, but we're going to take one anyway. We'll be right back with Game 2.
Welcome back to the SCC. Finch and Aggro here. And I don't know a whole lot of ways to say it, except for that was a tough one for the Clay Soldiers, man. Really seemed like Snake Hunters were in control for the vast majority of that game. And you kind of heard Mifflin say at the very beginning, I see Snake Hunters with a really CC-heavy draft. What is this Clay Soldiers draft meant to do? Well, we never got to see.
No, we sure didn't. I mean, we talked so much on the desk about the backline being solidified early, the On-Her-Scylla top 2 picks. What are they going to do? I don't think they had a death between them, and they did a ton of damage. I mean, these two just made it look really easy. And all the time, if both backliners are popping off, it is always because your front line is doing good work. And I got to give some shout-outs to Shoxy Foxy in particular in this game. I thought they played a phenomenal Ymir game. Rapio was all over the place on the circuit, confirming that I am cursed and that it's not the goddess. And of course, Kha'Zix's always looking very comfortable on this Cerberus. Really, it was just a team domination by the Snake Hunters in this one.
Yeah, that's another really great way to get a read on how comfortable the backline's feeling. Scylla dashing in aggressive. Just goes to show not a whole lot of pressure coming Gunter's away. 15,000 damage for a 9.5 KDA. Absurd from the backline of these Snake Hunters. Set up for them, though, by this double Guardian front line of Ymir Cerberus. And just in case there's someone the rest of the squad couldn't get to, Rapio was there, maneuvering around the map on this circuit and cleaning up any kills that needed to be. 11-0-7 for Coast, 5-1-9, a collective 16-1 backline. It's gonna be pretty hard to win if the backline's going 16-1.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, 26,000 damage for Coast. I mean, come on, man. He absolutely dominated in this game. And now you're at the point where if you're Clay Soldiers, you have choice of first pick or second pick. What would you like to do? I think that you might want to take first pick and just take the On Her, because it's not a pick that you really necessarily want to ban. You hope that Caspanify has got to have it in the God pool. I think that it is that important, really. If he's going to look that good, and Mifflin talked at length about how On Her and Heim, I mean, Heim is just good at not fighting you. It didn't seem to matter that he didn't fight. I mean, you got to be able to take this pick away from Coast right now. I think he's too locked in on it.
Yeah, Coast has been looking really good for them so far this entire season, and giving him what is seen now to be considered the very best ADC pick, at least by the SPL pros, and even here in the SCC, doesn't seem like a good combination. Let's move into the picks and bans for game number 2, and hopefully we can see Clay Soldiers extend this set out a little bit, because that was, 25 minutes, I think? Pretty quick game number 1 there for the Snake Hunters without really ever much doubt, and there it is. That makes a ton of sense, I think.
You got to make a choice on it, and this is telling to me though that they aren't willing to just first pick it, right? I mean, I think that you have a pretty easy option in that spot to just be able to first pick it, but maybe the Achilles is that important for Sibby. He did have pretty good lane control for a vast majority of that game. They were able to keep Kha'Zix down a little bit, but eventually that Cerberus is going to get out of laning phase, and then he's just a team fighting Guardian that was ahead in items, so it's not going to be easy at that point either. Seems like they want to stick to that Achilles. I don't know. I mean, it's not horrible. I don't hate it by any means, but just a little bit surprised that this is the direction we see them go.
And I wonder if they do still prioritize the back line without the On Her, and it looks like no. It does make sense to me prioritize this Ymir. I think with Athena and Yamoja gone, the consensus has kind of become that he's that next best up support right now. His wall's so strong, but what do they pair with it? The Scylla's still open, and that is what they grab for Gunter in game number 1. So yeah, Ymir Scylla, maybe not quite as knockout as On Her Scylla, but still pretty darn good.
Yeah, I like it a lot still for the Snake Hunters. I mean, why fix it if it ain't broke? I mean, you're in a really good position now if you're the Snake Hunters. I'm just a little bit curious as to whether or not Set is going to be prioritized. I think that he was the ban that got replaced by that On Her, and we don't see him quite yet. It's a god that I'm assuming Rapio can play. I'd almost assume that Kha'Zix is going to go Cerberus next pick based on what we've seen from them. I think that that's probably the direction we're going to see them go, or lock in a pick for Coast now that On Her's banned.
Well, let's see if they make an adjustment then in their order, because the Clay Soldiers sure haven't. Their big adjustment was no longer having to deal with that On Her, Achilles, Heimdall, and Giannis, though, those same top 3 picks from them. So they do, on the Snake Hunters, keep up with a Hunter here, but they go at the Jingwei. I'm a little surprised. I thought for a while Chernobog was going to be really highly valued in a world where you couldn't do on her Heimdall, but he's dropped off a little bit too. People like this Jingwei coming in. Is it for the safety or maybe just the inherent crit synergy with how good the crit build is right now?
That's a yes and a yes. Yeah, you nailed it. That's both the reasons that she gets played. Yeah, you're not punishing this goddess, and when crit is good, she just has more of it than you do because of explosive bolts, and those auto attacks feel kind of unmissable because they're so wide and do splash damage. So you're feeling pretty good about your odds whenever you lock in that Jingwei. And I know she's thought of as this super defensive runaway ADC, and she can be that, but she can also push leads really, really well because it's impossible to get away from her if you start to fall behind. So Clay Soldier's got to do a better job of keeping Coast in check in this game, because just because he's on the Jingwei doesn't mean he's going to stop dashing it.
No, and when she's paired with someone with such easily applied CC like Amir, suddenly that knock up becomes so difficult to deal with, doesn't it? It's freeze into your knocked up, into you're just taking damage the whole time. And she can kind of become a lane bully in that way when she's paired with kind of a nice aggressive support over there on that role. So the Clay Soldiers' big adjustments so far are really the ban. So far the draft very similar, but they took the Cerberus out and the on her. They're kind of making the side lanes make some adjustments. And we already saw what Coast went with, and now what Kozik's going with. It's the Jingwei and the Kukulkan. Sure, you pushed them down off 2 good picks, but they ended up with some pretty good ones anyway.
Yeah, they did, but it is a very different playstyle here for Kha'Zix on the Kukulkan versus the Cerberus. So I appreciate that they were able to change up his playstyle and make the Snake Hunters do something at least a little bit different. Immediately they have a little bit less automatic CC in their composition, and that was clearly a big problem for the Clay Soldiers in Game 1. They've done a good job of keeping them off that, at least. Is back to the Xing Chen Go's agent. To say that was a tough one for the for Game 1 on him is probably an understatement. Was really questioning the Xing Chen pick during that game. It doesn't look a whole lot better to me here. It gets over Ymir wall, and it's easy to lock down and kill the Ymir. That's kind of where I assume it's coming from.
Well, the Clay Soldiers get to kind of... They have this opening now because the Snake Hunters don't ban Loki this time around. I think the Sobek is the additional ban. It was banned by Clay Soldiers in Game 1, so the Snake Hunters didn't have to ban it.
Oh, you're right. That's what it was.
Is what happened. So this time around, Loki does make it through, and then the adjustments for Snake Hunters are just the 2 that got banned, the Jingwei and the Kukulkan. Still want the Serket, though, for Rapio, and that last pick selected. So still a good amount of CC. Warcry and Spear of Mortal Pain are not bad tools since you're moving away from Staging and Torment. So maybe the Snake Hunters can do a whole lot of the same, just a little bit less pressure from the ADC?
And they keep up that mobility. I mean, they don't have the Nemesis, but the Loki, very hard to track down as well. I just think that Loki, if he falls behind in this game, like Zek did in the last one, I feel like there's even less comeback potential on a god like Loki in comparison to Nemesis. Nemesis Ultimate is going to feel at least marginally okay, even when you're behind. Loki is really just providing damage. But with Giannis and Loki and Heim, who do you go on if you're Rapio in this game? I mean, it is difficult to find a good assassination target. Maybe the Clay Soldiers can be slippery enough to slip through the Snake Hunters.
Well, Clay Soldiers didn't look great in Game 1. Casters, do you like things better here in Game 2?
Well, similar composition, I think, for Clay Soldiers. They keep solo, mid, hunter, and support, but they swap out their jungle myth, and I think that's the place where you got to look here. If you're looking at the Clay Soldiers draft, they're thinking, well, Game 1 was an outlier, and I think hard to disagree with how things went. Is the swap to the Loki from the Nemesis, though, enough to give you comfort, enough to give you confidence in this composition working this game?
Well, I'm glad that you bring up the Loki immediately. Just as a point of reference for the viewers at home, this is played on 8.4, so the Loki competitive ban is not effective in the SCC. So we do just get to talk about the relative value of this god, and I think that Loki is straight up better than Nemesis. Full stop, blanket statement. I don't need to defend it any further than that, but I guess I will. The damage output is there, incredibly slippery, as aggro already highlighted, but I think Loki has some of the best beads burning tools in the game just because he has the safety of stealth. It's almost like when a Fenrir jumps forward and uses the Ragnarok, that burns beads, but it dedicates his body. Loki can ult in, stealth away, and hopefully get out of there pretty safely. I think that Loki as well is just a fantastic god for killing single targets. Gunter is going to have to keep his head on a swivel come mid-game if Sarah Gazette gets a couple items under his belt.
But the run back here from Agent, I think, is important to get a better game on the Xing Chen put together. I think it was an 07, 08, something like that finish there by the end of it. And again, probably a bit of an outlier. You don't expect that to happen every single game. Things just got out of control there in game number 1, but sticking with that same duo lane, you need this one to work now. You're going up against Shoxy Foxy on the Ymir yet again. The Ymir looks fantastic there in game number 1, and the Harpy is confirmed here by the Snake Hunters. But the big difference here, they Porsche Coast not given the chance to go 10-0 on the On-Her. It's going to be the Jingwei here instead. So maybe slightly less follow-up potential Mifflin on the back end of this Ymir. You can't combo all of those abilities together. So maybe a bit quieter in the laning phase this time.
It should be almost reminiscent of what we saw back in the tail end of Season 7, where Jingwei and Heimdall were the premier hunters for almost 4 months straight now. I think that Jingwei is played a little bit differently. Now that Crit's back in the meta, you can really get aggressive once you get a couple of items towards her. But Shoxy Foxy looks for a freeze on a Caspanify, followed up by a knockup. Should be able to put a lot of kill pressure onto Caspanify once they get a couple levels under him, whereas Clay Soldiers going back towards this Xing Shen, I think just kind of play the poke war. They want to utilize that HP 5 from Xing Shen to move up, take a little bit of damage in exchange for dealing damage to your opposition, back up, heal, rinse, repeat until eventually the Snake Hunters are injured enough that a jungler could rotate over and help out.
Well, there you go. Freeze into knock-up into damage, and Caspanify has to leave beneath half HP on that Heimdall. Saraga getting aggressive early on here. Blue buff invade. Rapio is rotating over, but blue buff drop down secured by the Clay Soldiers, and they'll walk away. So now the Snake Hunters in reply, starting to look towards this purple buff. Both the junglers on the right-hand side. This will just be a 2v2 engagement if it ends up rolling through. Mid lane's not rotating over, and the Snake Hunters will secure the purple buff for themselves.
Intelligent play from the Snake Hunters. Looked to me like they weren't really planning on invading that purple buff until they noticed that the Clay Soldiers sent Zergazek over to that right-hand side, realizing that there isn't going to be a counter rotation, and they already had pressure. They can move in pretty safely. Now all they have to do is clear out the wave, get to their own purple buff, and they've got themselves a pretty sizable lead. This does put the Snake Hunters in an awkward position, though. Do we want to continually find pressure onto this purple buff? Do we rotate Rapio over for a secondary invade, or do we send him back over to your own blue buff and defend it? We'll see, and we'll get a good look at the ideology of how the Snake Hunters are looking to approach this early game based on how they play this next rotation of buffs.
Look, it's already a better start for Saraga. It felt like by this point in game 1, we'll see if Sibby escapes. He will. Has to use the ultimate. The fatal strike to survive. Cozy feeling, or Kha'Zix, excuse me, feeling good over there in the soul lane. Better start, though, from Saraga. It felt like around this time, even just a few minutes into game number 1, the Nem had just started falling behind outside of farm. I mean, Rapio just off to a roaring start there in game 1. Found early pressure, early kills, slower from the Circuit. It's been poked out a little bit now against Rapio. So the Clay Soldiers, you don't often get to say this, Mifflin, but given the way game number 1 went, the Clay Soldiers are happy the fact that the first 4 minutes of this game have gone better than the first 4 minutes of game 1.
Yeah, what was a 1,000 gold lead is now only 100 in favor of the Snake Hunters. One can shift that one up immediately. And Zergazek, just like game 1, still does have a slight experience lead over his opposition. Rapio, level 5 to Loki's level 6, but it doesn't really matter that much at this phase of the game. Loki really doesn't get involved until around level 10, level 11, or maybe that second relic at 12, and then he can start playing that aggressive, just raw damage output style, that assassination style that we associate with him or used to before that rework. Looks like he is going to go in towards the Hydra's Lament in that first slot, or could transition it into a Transcendence. If he really wants to slow down his build, more likely going to be the Hydras, and once he does get that finished up, Gunter could potentially be in one-shot range for him.
Agent. Bit on the opposite side of the Porsche Coast there. I was wondering if we'd see an engage, and said there is an engage, but this time it's on the right-hand side. Kha'Zix will survive here as well. Now both solo laners nearly going down. Rapio lurking off to the side here, has the ultimate on the Circuit. It's half HP on Sibby. Saraga, I think, realizing maybe Rapio rotating in, but Rapio's not... He's not interested in ganking over to the soul lane. We just want to invade these back camps, maybe see if we can get something done. We'll just strip away as much farm as we can. Now it's Rapio. Blink in. Ultimate connects on a CB, but beads used, and the Achilles survives.
Looked to me like the Clay Soldiers fumbled a kill there. It looked like Sergazek missed the second part of his Assassinate ultimate, which would have put Kha'Zix into Assassination threshold, or Execute threshold, if you would, for Sibi. Unfortunate first blood dropped there. 6 minutes in the game, no kills across the board. Gold remained largely stagnant and even, but off of that exchange, two things happen. Kha'Zix maintains his relic, and Sibi loses out on his own. So you can probably expect Rapio to make another rotation over to the Soul Lane in the next 2 or so minutes to make use of that defensive relic being down.
That's right, it's important to capitalize on that. Clay Soldiers start off with 4 sets of beads here. There's just so much individual lockdown for the Snake Hunters that beads seem ever so necessary. Look at this, Kha'Zix getting aggressive. It's the blink in onto the Achilles. The transformation is over as well. The root will not connect. Maybe smelling a little bit of blood in the water with just the 1-level lead. Kha'Zix will try to get aggressive there, but Sibi able to back off. So that's a relic used. Maybe not feeling as sad about the blink being down as you are the beads being down, depending on where the junglers are. And right now, Rapio is over on the solo side of the map. This would be a devastating engage if it's able to connect.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the blink available, so he has to play it a little bit more intelligently, thinks better of it, decides that he doesn't really have the time to look for this gank instead, wants to clear out that blue buff and make sure an invade doesn't come through. A 4-man rotation from the Clay Soldiers on the right-hand side tells me that Rapio was well informed. Someone on his team must have called out that rotation, which dissuades him from the gank instead, goes back into his own jungle and farms it up. This stalemate continues into the 8-minute mark, but it feels like to me, Dave, the second we see that first blood roll through, it could immediately open up the doors of this match, especially if some POIs are spawned on the map. Fire Giant Scorpion gonna fall. That means that Pyromancer likely gonna be the first neutral objective to go down as well.
Right, it does feel that way, doesn't it? We're kind of balanced on a knife edge here in the early game. On both sides of the map, the Clay Soldiers controlling the Scorpions. Left side goes down, Gorpin, Forpmith, I'll say it for you so you don't have to. Both both given over to the Clay Soldiers, and that's built up just a little bit of a gold lead. Now 4,500 in the lead, but Vaporish Coast wants to get aggressive. Caspanify does not. Agent gets frozen through, but will leap away up and over that wall. There's that interaction. We figure we'll see maybe a couple of times here this game. Snake Hunters still fishing for that first kill, but come up short.
You can see the fear in Caspanify there. Vaporish Coast dashes forward and puts himself between Caspanify and Caspanify's own minions. He could have had the advantage going for an auto trade there, but, you know, a 10-0 on her who left a bad taste in his mouth. Agent in a little bit of trouble. Gonna fall down. Shuxy Foxy picks it up.
Ooh, Rapio had to dodge out that through space in time. That might have been just enough damage from Ferrocryk to turn around one of those kills. Spent a lot there, the Snake Hunters did. It was 4 ultimates used across the board. Looks like Kha'Zix just used his over, or maybe transformed. So 3 ultimates used there out of the mid lane. Snake Hunters able to get that first kill. It's Shoxy Foxy on the board with the detonate. Obviously, you'd like that to go to mid or jungle. So maybe not the firework flashy start that starts to snowball this game out of control, but it's a good start for the Snake Hunters now. Able to find some pressure yet again onto Agent.
Hey, I mean, I'm not going to complain about Ymir, who's able to pull ahead. That Frostbite passive at this phase of the game essentially makes him into a pseudo carry. He has that level of damage output. Picks up the Thieves a little bit earlier on as well. Get those stacked up means that he can play that frontline role all that much better. But now, Clay Soldiers, keep your eyes onto Agent, takes a peek into the enemy red buff there. That's a lot of confidence stepping forward. And he finds Coast for his trouble. Jingwei dashes out of the knockup easily, and that's how that matchup's going to go for the majority of the time. But I'm waiting for this duo lane, these ADCs. Eventually, it feels like to me, Vaporish Coast should be able to at least force a fight on a Caspanify.
Man, that's got to be a little frustrating if you're Agent, right? I mean, it feels like you just can't engage onto this Jingwei. You try to toss her up and then knock her down. Just going to dash out of it every single time. Agent can't do the same for the freeze, though. It's a freeze onto Agent, half HP on the Sheng Chen. Wall goes up to separate out the re-engage from the Clay Soldiers. Agent survives on, though. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel is there. If the engage is as well, looks like both teams will back away. Oracle's over to the Snake Hunters. About as big of an objective fight as we've gotten so far.
Yep, Gold Fury now going to be firmly in control of the Snake Hunters as far as the actual objective itself goes. But look at the Clay Soldiers warding on this left-hand side. Caspanify gets aggressive for the first time, and then immediately teleports out as Rapio works his way in. But that's a pretty long teleport. I think maybe could be on cooldown for about 60 or so seconds now. Could be an opportunity for Rapio to loop back around.
That's right. Caspanify overextends here. You're going to have to use the ultimate and the beads to survive against this Circuit. Vapor's Coast, half HP. Already starting to see, though, just a couple items in for Caspanify. Very hard to out-brawl a Heimdall, even at this early in the game, if the opportunity is there. Shoxy Foxy looking towards this purple buff. Caspanify, remember, beads and ultimate. Ready to go. Beads used to secure the purple buff, but it looks like Shoxy Foxy was kind of privy to what was happening there. Look at the ward coverage for the Snake Hunters looping around that mid lane. And that's a free set of beads here for Shoxy Foxy. Caspanify's now got to play double safe.
I smell fear in the water, Dave. This is twice now that Caspanify has done just knee-jerk reactions. The teleport out on that initial dash-in from Vapor's Coast told me that he really isn't feeling confident in lane, and then beadsing up against a Ymir on his own on purple buff when there really was just about zero potential for a steal there. Losing out that defensive relic is going to be absolutely huge. Caspanify going to have to be a little bit more trigger disciplined with these relics in the future, because these small plays, losing out on your beads the next 2 minutes, especially with Gold Fury being up already, could cost you a pretty large gold lead.
That's right, just under 2 minutes left on those beads, so that's something we'll have to monitor here. Both junglers have been happy just to stay back and farm. The 1 kill leaves 1 assist in the back pocket of Rapio. Saraga has just been happy to farm up as well, both level 12, and so all has been equal there. Haven't seen much from the Loki just yet. We've seen attempted ganks from Rapio, but the Loki realizing needs a little more itemization online to start to feel comfortable here in this game. Levels even in mid, 1 level lead over in support or in Hunter. Kha'Zix 2 levels ahead, now 1.5 maybe over Sibby over there in the solo lane, so this Kulkullen can maybe start to make some waves in the early game. Similar styles to the build over there in solo Myth. Void Shield over for Kha'Zix on one side, and Shifter Shield for Sibby on the other.
Yeah, a little bit more diversified defense for Sibby, and he's making use of it now. That damage output is pretty good. Rapio falls down low. Shoxy Foxy throws up the wall, but nobody there to follow up means he's not even willing to step up for the freeze. And Vaporish Coast doing exactly what Aggro said he would throughout that desk, and that's dashing forward. But now, finally, a neutral objective being looked at, and it's Clay Soldiers on the Pyro.
Kha'Zix is going to be the only one able to try to steal it away, and he will not. Clay Soldiers take the Pyromancer off the map. It's a wall from Shoxy Foxy on the attempted re-engage. Instead, it's the freeze and a little bit of extra damage on Agent on the back end. Sikkim goes wide as well. And the Clay Soldier is able to get away with one there. Closing up that gold gap just a little bit, kind of passively here, Mifflin. The Snake Hunters have built up about a 1,000 gold lead just through farming and pressure.
And now, 13 minutes into the game, the only neutral objective that is capable of being done. Fire Giant is up, but kind of a crazy goal at this point. Gold Fury should be what both teams are looking at now. And so far, which team has had the pressure inside a dual lane the entire time? It's been Vaporish Coast. You know what, Dave? You're right. I hope they do go FG. That'd be pretty sick.
14-minute Fire Giant feels good with a middling 400, 500 gold lead. Yeah, I think that's the right call here for both of these teams. But admittedly, I was surprised at the pace of game number 1. Right, we normally see the EU teams slow things down a little bit more methodical, calculated on their engage, a pick here, a pick there, maybe, and then go into the late game. There wasn't the case, rather, in game number 1. Ferrokrick uses the Aegis to stay alive. Beads not used there, but Beads used by Vaporish Coast. Caspanify throws his Aegis out as well. This Jing Wei maybe getting more aggressive. Instead, it's an airstrike defensively on towards Shoxy Foxy, and Saraga finds his way into a fight for the first time this game. But Vaporish Coast, he's disengaging so well from the rest of this fight. Look at the time that's been bought. The Snake Hunters rotating into the rest of this fight. Sikkim, no good, but Crush sure is, and Rapia will find the 2nd kill of the game.
Shoxy Foxy plays that perfectly. Blink forwards, immediately goes in the ultimate, realizing that Saragazek is going to pre-beads it, but maybe I don't get a chance to talk about it as Ferrokrick forced back Rapio on the chase, seeing if maybe he can find it, and he does!
And Caspanify aided I'm a Monster in the meantime, and now Gunter just needs one crush. No, just short on that. It has not started up on the Gold Fury just yet, or the Snake Hunter. Sibby will dodge out the Sikkim there. Rapio left alone between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower. Massive stop. Oh, beautiful wall from Shoxy Foxy to stay in it. Sibby won't find that kill, but the health bar so low now for the Snake Hunters. You doubt they could end up going on towards that Gold Fury. Kha'Zix rotates in as well. Sibi under a little bit of pressure. Agent is going to engage onto the Kulkulin, and finally we'll get a breath as both teams back away.
Yeah, so as I was saying, because I'm not going to forget about it, I have to talk about it. Shoxy Foxy, once we saw that engage on a Vaporish Coast where he uses the ultimate, the airstrike, defensively, he's worried about Sergazek chasing out that kill. Blinks forward to close gap, and then immediately goes into the ultimate instead of dropping the freeze. That slow should have been enough to get Vaporish Coast out of the situation, but beads are used, and the second it comes out of it, the second that CC immunity leaves behind the Loki, the freeze comes through, sends him back to base. Phenomenal play from Shoxy Foxy, who again, later on in that fight, gets a phenomenal wall to avoid and execute. This Ymir, I don't think Shoxy should be allowed to play it, man. They gotta start banning this.
Yeah, it's about the best looking 1-0 Ymir I've ever seen. Such a low kill game, but the minute plays have just been there from Shoxy Foxy so far this game. There's a Sikkim Crush combo onto Agent, just above half HP now as the Xing Chen, as the Gold Fury being looked at. A massive three-man wall from Shoxy Foxy! Oh, there's the re-engage from Gunter on the backside, and Agent gets deleted. When you got a Ymir playing this way, man, it's going to be hard to win, especially when the follow-up from the Scylla is there. It's going to be Gold Fury over to the Snake Hunters, and that's the first big lead we've got in this game.
It feels like to me Shoxy Foxy got bored, right? He's like, yeah, man, screw this. 17 minutes, only 5 kills. We had 15 kills at this point last time around, and he's starting to pick up the pace for his team. That's a 4-man wall. Ferrikrik able to get out of there with a portal. The rest of his team not nearly as lucky. And then Gunter with a multi-man I'm a monster to turn around that fight. Gold Fury goes the way of the Chaos team, and it's matched up with a 2,000 gold lead.
Yeah, Gunter has just been in the right place at the right time so far this game, giving shout-outs to the front line of the Snake Hunters, back line as well, with Gunter affecting all 4 of the kills so far. Blink forward, stun, wall just shy, but Rapio will find the re-engage with the ultimate. Vaporish Coast half HP now because Ferrikrik hit some big damage on the backside of that fight. Pyromancer respawning here shortly, so that's maybe the objective the Snake Hunters are looking at, unless we get our wish, Mifflin. We get a sub-20-minute Fire Giant started up, but I don't think the Snake Hunter's feeling that confident just yet. Just looking for some picks to set up for a Pyro.
Ferrikrik steps too far forward, puts his portal behind the wall. Another great one from Shoxy. Forces out not only the ultimate, but the beads as well. This Yanis is now exposed.
That's right. If the Snake Hunters can find the backline, it's going to be difficult for Ferrikrik to stay alive. The wall separating out this fight. Shoxy Foxy low on his HP bar, but so is Agent. Greater Scorpion body blocking for Agent, but it doesn't last long enough. Serica re-engages onto Vaporish Coast here, but the Loki is low as well. Shoxy will survive. It's a double for Vaporish Coast on the killing spree now. Aegis keeps him alive under the unstable vortex, and the Snake Hunters find 2. Clay Soldiers 1.
But Clay Soldier is still able to move forward.
Yeah, the
Sergazek,
damage.
despite being low, seeing if maybe he can find Vaporish Coast. No ultimate available to him means that Vaporish likely safe in this scenario. Snake Hunters win out on the engagement, but not clean enough to get the objective. Instead, it's Clay Soldiers grouping up first. Pyromancer should go their way.
So it's 2 kills for Snake Hunters, 1 kill for the Clay Soldiers plus Pyromancer. Keeps the gold lead right about 1,000 here. And Miff, given how the early and now mid moving on into late game has gone, you expected that fight to be maybe a little bit closer, or a little bit less close, but the Clay Soldiers did a good job despite an early set of beads and ult used by Ferrikrik there, returning around a lot of that damage.
Yeah, it's off the back of phenomenal Loki play from Sergazek, able to confirm the kill onto Kha'Zix, and then separate the team fight of the Snake Hunters. You gotta imagine Snake Hunters not happy with how that one pans out. Instead, likely gonna try and play a little bit more tightly grouped so that they can't get separated by this Loki in the next engagement. Fire Giant, the only neutral objective available, and Snake Hunters look slow on the uptake. Instead, a 1v1 in the jungle and a 1v1 in duo. Sergazek forced to use the ult.
Yeah, and it's perfectly timed there. Gunter,
What
though,
a wall!
finds damage onto
God.
Ferrikrik. Portal on through from Ferrikrik, through space and time as well. The Giannis running for his life. Agent is as well. A travesty that the Snake Hunters don't get a kill on the back end of that engage. We need a what a wall button now from Shoxy Foxy, because seems like every time he's given the opportunity, the walls are just catching out somebody on the enemy team. Yet again, it's happening. Agent stunned down, crushed just in front of the wall. Rapio locked up, locked down as City rotates in behind this fight. Agent is half HP here, so is the mid lane tier 1 tower. So the Clay Soldiers, soft defense. Caspanify has to use the Aegis. It's these small moments. Beads used here, Aegis used there. Where the Clay Soldiers are kind of getting killed in the trenches, you feel like.
And now the Chaos team has another opportunity where they can start to work their way towards the neutral objective. Fire Giant still available, and all these relics down on the side of Clay Soldiers. You gotta imagine the Chaos team very willing to take a team fight now. But instead, it is going to be another return back to neutral. Both squads not feeling confident enough. 2,000 gold, not nearly enough liquid courage for them. Instead, it's going to be the Clay Soldiers grouping up on the left-hand side, seeing if maybe the Snake Hunters go to the Fire Giant. They can at least strip away a tier 1, potentially a tier 2, or we might see the fight erupt around the Gold Fury first.
Seems like Saraga is in a great spot to make something happen in the next fight. Transcendence fully stacked, Crusher there as well, Hydra's on the back end of it. This Loki, if led in to the back line, if he's able to find Gunter or Vapor's Coast for free, the damage will maybe be insurmountable outside of the Aegis and the beads having to get used there. So a lot of this probably hinging on the Clay Soldiers and their ability to get this Loki into a position of power now. Primal Fury just shy of respawning. That means the Snake Hunters make their way onto the left here. No real ward coverage on the backside of the pit from the Clay Soldiers. Oracle's over to the Snake Hunters as well. That means this objective can get started up and quickly. Clay Soldiers probably realize something's happening, but not quick enough to make any actionable change on what's happening there. Rapio now leaps on in onto Faircrick through space and time. Defensively, yet again, looks like this Giannis is just not going to get the chance to find big damage with that ultimate just yet. Agent walks back forward into the portal. He goes, and Clay Soldiers remain strong as 5.
I wonder how many times in a row now Faircrick has used beads and then immediately followed up with additional CC immunity from the ultimate, all defensively. I want to say last 3 team fights, he's been forced to do that, and now they got to work their way forward into the Fire Giant without their best engaged tool. Agent, no Whirlwind or Rage of Steel. Faircrick, no through space and time. Best of luck.
Agent walks around the corner there, and he's maybe sad that he did. Kha'Zix jumps in, finds a couple with the knock-up, but Clay Soldiers now disengaging. No beads for Faircrick, no actives at all for Agent. Aegis down for 35 seconds for Caspanify. Rapio and Saraga, the 1v1 between the jungle becomes a 2v1, and of course Shoxy Foxy hits the freeze, and Rapio lives to fight another day. Loki, maybe the strongest member of the Clay Soldiers, was there, and in the meantime the Fire Giant gets taken down by the Snake Hunter. Sibi looking to strip it away from at least one, but he will die instead. Vapor's Coast getting that one. The Clay Soldiers have to run.
They do. Agent isolated. Faircrick as well. Shoxy Foxy doing as best as can to catch him out here. But no slow is going to connect. That should be a clean disengage from the Clay Soldiers now. But the Snake Hunters, Fire Giant on 5. Gotta imagine they're going to go for some towers. Rapio with the 4-1 split. We're likely going to go down mid lane. This is a soft defense from the Clay Soldiers, but I don't imagine it amounts to much. They think better of it. Faircrick back to base, Caspanify back to Phoenix, and Agent on the run.
They can tally one more through space and time that's used for CC immunity there. Faircrick gets looked at the wrong way by Shoxy Foxy and pulls the trigger on that ultimate. Caspanify knock-up immune, but not damage immune, unfortunately. Gunter gets the kill here. Faircrick through the portal, avoiding a big bit of damage there. Saraga's back from respawn, maybe getting a kill onto the Ymir here. Somehow Agent has survived. There's still a Phoenix standing. Instead, the Snake Hunters want to fight, and that gives Clay Soldiers time to re-engage.
Now Rapio jumps over the wall. No jump available means that he's isolated here. The doors do open up for him. Segazek gonna die to the poison. Nice play from Rapio.
Well, it's this second wind fight from the Snake Hunters that's working out so well. Big stun from Sibi, but it's not nearly enough. Agent, the last one to fall for the Deicide, and Snake Hunters take the right side Phoenix, and it looks like they'll take game 2.
Yeah, it felt like for a second there the Snake Hunters forgot their PEMDAS. They were going for the dive before the Phoenix fell. Back up, rework it, and then regroup yet again. Once Rapio's there, the team fight goes over cleanly. 13-3. What is that, a combined 35-5 slash line for the set?
Yeah,
Snake Hunters, very convincing victory.
Well, this is what the desk was talking about, right? Where it feels like so many of these teams can be closely matched. It's just who shows up on any given day. Today it was the Snake Hunters, and you hoped maybe that if you're going to stick with such a similar draft on one side of things, that you're able to bring a fresh look at it and things look a little better. But Myth, the Xing Chen, the Heimdall, the Giannis in the mid lane just kept getting shut down.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm not the largest fan of Jing Chen out of support unless you match it up with a ton of other AoE CC on your team. If you're playing Jing Chen, I think in Season 8 you might as well just be playing Ares. Maybe it's time to hang that one up a little bit.
Well, the Snake Hunters cruise to a 2-0 win here in the SCC set of the day, and that means we'll cruise right on to break. The post-game desk up next.
Welcome back to the SCC here in Europe, Finch and Aggro. And Aggro, it looks like now it's the Snake Hunters that move up a little bit in the standings here and get a little bit closer to what I think is the ultimate test of catching up to Elysium. But how did they do it? Good performance, I think, out of Shoxy Fox here yet again on this Amir. Some struggles on the other side, though. What'd you see as the big difference maker, though?
Look, it's going to come off as more toxic than I mean it to be, but this one was a duo diff in this game. I mean, Shoxy Foxy
Yes.
and Vaporous Coast absolutely dominated in every single team fight, whereas Agent and Caspanify really struggled to have a positive impact for their squad. The Xing Chen pick for Agent, I think I'm ready to bench for a little bit. Goes 0 for 2 on impactful games on it here in this set. Caspanify was really just trying to live the vast majority of the time in this duo lane. This wall from Shoxy was unreal. I mean, you have no time at all in order to get that off, but he does. This was a big play, helping out Rapio, making sure that Zek didn't find that 1v1. These two really combined. Coast didn't die today. He went 7-0 in game 1, 5-0 here in this one. When Coast is looking like this, man, I really think that he can be that next level ADC. You've got to be if you want to compete with Spudio, because I think he is that premier ADC at this level. But if Coast can start to match that output and give him the hands, then I think the Snake Hunters could be a team that gives Elysium some problems.
You're right. I mean, above him right now, Spudio, Okeanos, those are the guys he's got to try and line up to, streak up as well. But I think Coast very much putting himself in that list of top ADCs right now here in the SCC, in Europe certainly, but maybe in the SCC in general with the kind of performance he just had today. Let's look at the numbers. Surg at least, or Saraga, able to at least get 3 kills on the board, but the only one who could actually draw blood for the Clay Soldiers. Another 5 deaths for Agent. He's ending something close to 0-13, I believe. Just not his best day. I think Agent going to give us some better performances, just was not here for him today. But hard not to give credit to the Snake Hunters. 23,000 damage again for Coast. I don't get how he does it. There wasn't even that much time in the game. They're ending at 24 minutes. He's doing 1,000 damage a minute. Like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, you're not beating that. And you know what I love is that he also took like 22,000 damage. So he was getting in there and getting his hands dirty. He takes that much damage and doesn't die, which says a lot about how well he played, and of course how well his team played around him. Gunter looked good today. Kha'Zix rock solid as always, and Rapio always that leader for this squad. The Snake Hunters team, man, when they're clicking, they look like they might be the number 2 team in this region. But that's the thing about Europe is that there are days where accounting department looks like they should be the definitive number 2 team, or Pandemonium. Like, it's just hard to say what version of each team we're going to get. We got the good version of the Snake Hunters today.
That's right, and the challenge for Elysium now is to kind of keep all 3 of those teams at bay and kind of let them fight it out beneath them a little bit for that spot number 2, because remember, those are the critical positions here in the SCC in both individual regions, the top 2 from each one. Let's go ahead and look at those standings. We're referencing it's exactly as you said. It's a 3-car pileup in second to the accounting department, Snake Hunters, and Pandemonium. Clay Soldiers right behind, also still certainly not out of reach, and only 1 game of breathing room for Elysium, and just F6 still looking to turn things around with their rough start to the season, but certainly have plenty of time, I think, to start clicking and trying to get a little bit of momentum going, but likely going to be hard for them to catch up to the actual top 2 at this point, but certainly could still start looking better. Let's take a look at the schedule, though. We still have 1 more game to go here in the SCC. That will be tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. It'll be North America, Herculean Hoops up against the Fishies. That has every reason to be a good matchup. See if they can catch up to those other teams up at the top of the NA standings.
Basically a must-win for the Hoofs. I mean, you can't afford to start dropping these games. They started off 0-3. You're chasing teams like the Sturdy Artisans, who managed to stay undefeated against all odds up against the Tiburones earlier on this week. You've basically got to win this if you're the Hoofs, if you want to try and get to that top 2 spot, because the Tiburones now only sporting that 1 loss. You're going to need some help in addition to running the table from here on out.
It's too tight in both of these regions, isn't it, if you're trying to make up to the top, but for different reasons. In NA, it seems that the top 2 have created a ton of space, and who can break into that? But in EU, there's like 4 teams vying for that second place spot, so it's 2 different types of closeness, but they're still very close nonetheless. So basically what I'm saying at the end of it is what I say every time. You must watch these SEC games, because in the end, they'll end up pretty darn important. It is SPL, though. That's going to be coming up next right after this. I think we're going to be starting that at 1 p.m. Eastern, though, about a little over half an hour away if you're in a different time zone, so make sure you're sticking around for that, which will be coming up shortly.
Yeah, it should be a really good day. Of course, we've got the Dragons up against the Leviathans, the game that everyone's excited about because both the 2 undefeated teams left in the SPL, someone is losing that O, as Hazer very beautifully put it on a graphic that he made.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts, isn't it? I mean, I think Dragon's got to be at least a bit of a favorite, but Leviathans are full of surprises this year. They're certainly going to give them a good run for their money. That's all coming up in a little over a half hour, though, so stick with us, and then we'll be back with the SPL.